All right. 10.
Okay. That sounds good.
1 zip. I'm gonna get you, bro. I'm gonna get you. Oh yes, I did hit it. Yes, I did it. 1-1.
You need a halt?
Hit it, bro. 2-1. Come on with it. Come on with it. Yeah. I think there's another one around the corner. They're everywhere. Yeah, if you walk around here, get to the back.
There it goes.
Oh, yeah?
Your reverse. Yeah, it's okay. When it goes on the YouTube, it'll be right. We did it yesterday.
Lucas, we're live.
Yeah.
It'll be fine on the YouTube. Like we already did it. It looks reversed on here, but it's right on the YouTube thing.
All I have is. Why don't I have?
Yes.
I don't think he's actually.
You want a halt?
Yeah.
Who plays pawn?
I offered you and then never mind.
Holes tees. We got 2 viewers.
Sweet.
Uh-oh.
Okay, you're up. Except all I see is a blank seat.
Can you? Oh, it's probably we got 3 viewers.
Oh, there's a delay.
Yeah, there's probably a delay on it.
How long is the delay?
There.
There he is.
There's a delay, so you're good. Just don't do anything crazy yet, because it'll show up later.
We're live?
We're live. We're going.
Okay.
Does anyone have any questions for Susan?
No idea what we're doing. I don't know.
We're live right now.
Hi, I'm Lucas Overby, Libertarian candidate for the United States House in Florida's 13th District. Tonight we are doing a digital town hall. We also have some people here with us. We just got done with ballot questions and see if any of the kids have some questions here. You can grab us through Facebook at facebook.com/LucasTOverby or through our website at lucasoverby.com to write in questions for me. We'd be more than happy to answer anything you got. I believe we'll be doing this for about half hour, 45 minutes. So please feel free to reach out and ask us what you have. I believe we got some questions coming up here in just a minute.
Can you, I'd like you to just review your activism in women's rights, because that's been important to a lot of groups that you've spoken with.
The questions about my history with women's rights activism. I got involved with a group called SOAR through Vagina Monologues in 2005. Did a lot of mostly fundraising and behind-the-scenes stuff. Was also involved with rape crisis counseling and abused women's shelters through CASA. Also was very fortunate to get to work with part of the CASA expansion to include same-sex couples. So that's the basis of my activism there. A lot of that grew out of the LGBTQ work that I started in 2002.
Great. What are some of the other questions that we've been asked? Why aren't you a Democrat?
To my party affiliation, I registered as a Libertarian when I was 17, and when we decided to run for office, we thought it would be inappropriate to go as anything other than how I had been registered, simply to run for office. We thought it would be dishonest. The Libertarian platform, by and large, matches my personal philosophies the best, especially the non-aggression principle. but we do line up closely with Republicans and Democrats on many issues. And like I said, the intellectual honesty of running as the party that I've always been affiliated of was the primary concern.
What about your tax plan? That's something that's had a lot of interest in.
The questions about our tax reform policies. When we started looking at the tax reform stuff, we didn't want to go with reinventing the wheel. So we did start looking around at different pieces of legislation to see what we could adapt. The vast majority of what we're looking at is a collapse and cut. We want to collapse the tax code into larger brackets so that low-income families and middle class have less barrier to prosperity. This way, as people are getting into the workforce, developing their trade, and growing their careers, they're not continually being beat up with increased taxes. The lower bracket that we've looked at is 18 to 100,000, where you wouldn't see any tax increase over that period. The other side of that we've looked at is reducing the loopholes and the deductions, and also cutting the taxes. We're going to be pushing for up to a 45% income tax decrease, paired with removing the loopholes and the deductions. That way, you're sending less money to the federal government in the hopes of getting it back. Best part about that plan is it is revenue positive. On the upper side, getting rid of the deductions and loopholes very largely increases the access to revenues on the upper side of the scale.
Thank you. You have a question? Would you like to ask? We're having an online town hall. Lucas Overby is running for Congress. Feel free to ask him anything. What is your favorite part about, has been your favorite part about campaigning in the last 2 years?
Not sleeping. I've loved the insomnia. My favorite part's been getting to work with so many different people. When we started, we realized that we couldn't win an election with the very small number of libertarians that lives in Pinellas County. So we immediately jumped into reaching out to different groups across party lines as much as possible. To date, we've met with or spoken to close to 200,000 people personally. And as tiring as that's become over the last 2 years, it's been the most rewarding. Some of the best solutions and ideas that we've come up with have really come directly out of the district, which has made our platform very much the platform of Pinellas County. Take a break for just a second, make sure that our feed is good.
If you have a question, ask.
I would ask. Yeah, it's fun. What your biggest thing?
Can we stop the feed? That's there. Forward to your house. How it's actually work. There you go.
You drank too much tea and Red Bull. No, I'm like, this is this. Deposit?
Oh, fuck.
Not a fan of politics.
All right, we're back. I think we're going to kind of turn this into an interview candidate thing. This is Jody, right?
Yes.
What was your question?
My question is, how do we give back to the mothers, the single mothers that apply themselves, go to school, go to work, that are taking care of themselves? Like last year I had gotten $9, and now this year I work for the government and I make $13.50 now. I worked my way up. Busted my butt, went to school, and I got this job. But now I don't qualify for any help with daycare.
Mm-hmm.
Well, daycare costs as much as most people rent. And now today I went to an appointment to try to get some reduced daycare, and they said I made too much money. Well, what happens when I can't feed my daughter, or I can't, start paying into college or pay her health care anymore because it's $130 a month for health care? I'm trying to provide all of this for my daughter and by myself, but simple things such as, like a reduced daycare or a program that can, I can pay it off later, like a later form of taxes. There's no help. There's nothing for people like me. I live off nothing. Pretty much broken hopes and dreams that fill my refrigerator. And
Jody, what's your question again?
Well, simplify. Yeah, I'll simplify the question. And unfortunately, it's not a lot of that's not in my wheelhouse. Unfortunately, that is a state issue. The question was largely about programs and helping for young families and single moms, which we obviously get a lot of questions for that. On the state side, I know there are several local representatives working for programs like that. It has not gone well in the state of Florida the last 4 years or so. From our end, one of the things that we looked at, I'm lower middle class myself. My wife and I both work full time, and barely get the ends to meet most weeks. As opposed to week to week, we're usually every other week for our paychecks. So I do completely understand.
That's what I do for a living. I'm an utility specialist for the city of Clearwater. So I give people that are struggling extensions every day. I'm the one that plays God. Do they have water this week or do they not? Of course, the city's out. We're trying to make all of this money, and we're turning off people that have kids in the home. We're turning off people that are working 3 jobs. I genuinely feel sorry for these people because I have to be the one that issues the off water. I know firsthand how much it sucks not being able to take care of just everyday household expenses that, you see all the inflation for water. We're going to 4.5% this year. Electric has gone up. These are just standard living needs. Well, where does the cost of living go up? And then how do they decide to cut off? Like, oh, you make too much money with this help. How do we get us to a point to where, okay, this is what you need to do to get to here, from point A to point B, to where you're being able to be self-sufficient.
A lot of what we looked at with that, we obviously wanted to help, and we obviously wanted to do something that was as efficient and as quick as possible. A lot of that falls into the tax reform work that we've been looking at. We found that one of the biggest barriers for people that started at the bottom and are trying to work their way up, the lower middle class has 4 or 5 individual tax brackets. So as you're slowly trying to develop yourself and build yourself up, I know for me personally, I in the early zeros landed in terrible timing for tax brackets because I would get a raise and then I'd end up losing money that year because now I made too much money and I jumped the tax bracket. When you got a 2-year-old at home, an extra $1 an hour is not too much extra money, but we run into that quite often. So what we looked at was eliminating that altogether, collapsing the tax bracket so that for a lower middle class family, as you started to climb the ladder and as you started building your household and developing your family, you didn't jump that tax bracket. We also looked at substantial decreases to the income tax. How do we do that? How do we accomplish that so that people have more of their own money in their pockets each week? I know for me personally, there's several times that I've looked at my paycheck and gone, man, if I just had the taxes out of this paycheck, I could have paid my power bill this week. So we formulated a larger tax plan. There's been several smaller ones on the floor that our reps have refused to push. That has been one of our biggest targeted things, is to make doing business and make running a household as easy as possible for lower middle class families.
Well, I mean, I feel like the child care credits and stuff, I mean, many women that have multiple children, they do get more of a break, of course, than myself. With only one child, which I'm not having anymore. This is enough birth control for me, struggling. I would say a lot of people would agree that, maybe making a cut there to have more money into our paychecks, that would be amazing to me. I mean, okay, I got $5,500 last year. Why give me that lump sum where we're bound to be broke again in 3 months because we're busy paying off our debt for the other 8 months of the year? So
I had a young lady that there's a reason why elections are in November and not in April with tax season. And the young lady during the special election got very upset when I proposed eliminating the exemptions. Very similar situation to yours, young struggling mother, and got a phone call from her right after tax season. She didn't get hardly anything back. The paperwork was done wrong. She didn't get the money back that she had anticipated, and it was heartbreaking. But what I told her was, well, this is what we're talking about. Instead of giving more money to the federal government, hoping that you fill your paperwork out correctly to get it back, just stop giving it to them. Keep it. Use it for, you know better how to spend your money than I do.
It wasn't initially designed to be around forever. It was to get through the war and famine during 20s, 30s, 40s when we were going through some hard times. Same thing, child labor laws, how they stay in effect, and a lot of like Social Security. We're not even going to see that. I don't believe we're ever going to see that. I pay no pension now, and I'm grateful for that because honestly, I feel that our generation, I'm 24, so I feel that our generation, when we hit, close to retirement age, at that age, we'll probably be 68. We're not going to have anything.
So Social Security is obviously a big question that comes up for us, with the average age of our area approaching wanting to get their Social Security benefits. And unfortunately, that becomes a double-edged sword. They paid into the system. They should get it back. We're also paying into the system. Where do we get it? And a lot of what we've looked at is the amount of raw money spent by the federal government on programs that are either for war, for subsidies for massive corporations, tax breaks for them. They do nothing for us. That we're paying for those things to happen. If you were to cut those budgets, we've actually said we would be in favor of reappropriating the money for a period to get Social Security back to where it was money in, money out, as opposed to, and make it optional. Because I know for a lot of people our age, the question becomes, well, I don't want to do that. I would rather invest it elsewhere. Give me the money instead, and I'll invest it on my own. Because it's a gamble for us to invest in the Social Security at this point anyway.
Well, you have jobs, okay, police officer. 30 years ago, you're a police officer. You can retire at 45, but you have a pension for the rest of your life. Well, no one, expected our life expectancy to just rise as much as, what is the expectancy? 80?
Almost 80 now.
Almost 80 years old. Okay, well, the turn of the century was what, 55? Okay, so you work for 30 years and then you retire. Well, now, people are working 50, 60 years, and with their life expectancy going up, the cost of healthcare going up, cancer on the rise, so many life-threatening illnesses on the rise, of course. And my biggest thing was, my dad, he passed away last year. He worked for 40 years, had a private, I know I'm kind of all over the place, but he had private health insurance for 40 years, got cancer, he calculated it over years, he had a personal calculate, he paid almost $500,000 in the private health insurance. It told him a lack of proper health because he couldn't pay private health insurance. So people that, police officers, firefighters, doctors, these are all great professions. I definitely think that they should be great retirement. But we're going to be paying off all this debt for so long. Police officers retiring 45. Public's managers. Public's, they do a lot of non-personal investments with stocks. I worked for Publix for 4 years, but you have people there that, work their way up to our managers by the time they're 40 years old. They're retiring at 50. We're paying them too. I don't think that, Great, you did a good job. You built your own success. I'm happy. But if you're not contributing to society, what if you live another 40 years? You know, us workers, we have to, you know, double time just to make sure that, you know, we're taking care of you. We're taking care of the babies right now. We're still going to be taking care of the $11 trillion debt we haven't even begun to touch for the war in Iraq. I mean, there's so much debt that we've been putting on our plate for the last 15, 20 years that we haven't begun to touch. So
obviously, one of the big conversations that is going to end up having to happen, especially for our generation, is it time to start moving up the age of what we consider retirement? Social Security was started, the vast majority of people that paid into it were never expected to actually use it. The age of Social Security was 2 years older than the average life expectancy.
We hope they don't live that long, and that's sad.
Well, it's for the program to be there and be usable is fine. As an option, it's definitely fine. If somebody wants to put in the money into that program and get it back, that's great. But again, how do we make it so that it's a money in, money out system? And I think a lot of it is fixing what happened in the 80s with Social Security, which robbed it. You know, it was a relatively successful program until we got a program, stole the money out of it, and then said that the workers would pay it forward. We are going to have to come to a point where we rebolster that program, allow it to go back to a money in, money out system. And if you and I decide we want to utilize it, we will. If not, the people that do utilize it, it'll be there for them. You know, that question, unfortunately, has gotten to the point where nobody wants to tell which generation is going to get the boot. You know, nobody wants to tell the seniors that have paid in their whole lives that they're not going to get the benefits that they've paid for, and nobody wants to tell us you're going to pay for all this, but you're not going to get any of the benefits. There's elections to be considered to actually have real conversations.
What side are you? I mean, what is your ultimate passion for this? What is your goal? What do you feel most strongly about?
For just Social Security or for all of it?
For everything in general. I mean, we've touched bases on everything. So
a lot of what we've targeted has been how do we make life better for everybody in the short term? How do we make our lives more isolated from the government so that we can just live our lives? A lot of my background is in social work. I've come from a very progressive social background. I work a lot in women's rights, LGBTQ rights, a lot of human rights work. So I've worked with struggling families consistently throughout my entire activist career. So we, instead of looking at really big, grandiose plans, we looked at, well, what do we do to help people tomorrow that builds towards the future that we want. That's why, you know, tax reform has been a huge one for us. It's something that we can accomplish short term, and we can help people tomorrow. We get tax reform passed tomorrow. The next day, people see their paychecks increase. Minimum wage has been a big one recently. It's been a big topic recently. My big concern with the minimum wage increase is, okay, we go to $15 an hour. How many tax brackets did you just jump? Even if you go to 10, you jump a tax bracket or 2. The tax code will take about 5 years to catch up. It's a great revenue source for the federal government off the backs of the extraordinarily poor.
Oh, well, yeah, but then guess what? Then we're going to, our cost of living, inflation, oil companies, they're going to,
everything will modulate.
Yeah, instead of, right now we're excited, oh, it's $2.89 for gas, it's going to go up to $6 a gallon if rates go up to $15. No, I strongly feel that you get paid in society for what you're worth. If you want to work at McDonald's for $7.50 an hour, that's great. That means that you don't want to, I mean, nobody at 30 years old wants to go, okay, let me apply for jobs. No. You have to get to a point in your life. I mean, we all started off at 16. We all started off with crappy first-time jobs. We worked in the garden on the beach. You know what? I didn't want to work there. So I worked my butt off. I worked my butt off. I was out of Publix. I worked up my way up from there. It's like, okay, not making enough. Got a job at lunch crafters. Okay, my doctor's assistant. And then I applied at the city. And I was, okay, so I'm going to use my skills and keep progressing. That's what minimum wage jobs were designed to do. I mean, granted, not everybody's going to be a doctor or lawyer. We have to have people make our food. We have to have people build computers. We have to have people build houses. So there are going to be people that have to work for.
Yeah, us laborers aren't generally minimum wage, but some of us are. Well, here's the thing. If what we looked at was, as opposed to trying to make a forced jump in minimum wage, decrease the tax burden on the lower middle class, it works out to be actually a very similar amount of money. It works out to be about an extra $1 an hour for both of them. But what it also does, and right now, while I agree in principle with the working your way up, what we've managed to do over the last 15 years or 20 years or so is destroy middle class jobs. If there's no middle class jobs for the middle class to work, then they're stuck at the lower income jobs. They're stuck at working McDonald's when they're 30, because instead of the opportunities where you had to slowly build your way out, we've eliminated that entire set of rungs to that social economic ladder. Decreasing the tax burden allows businesses to give raises, actual real ones, for doing a good job. It allows decrease in costs, and it allows several it allows growth and expansion in a more natural market environment for, obviously we don't want anybody going under. Obviously we don't want everybody living off of government help. How do we bridge the gap? And like I said,
People to get jobs. People are
help,
lazy.
making sure that there's actual jobs helps too.
It is easier being a hobo. You know how many people I know that thoroughly enjoy living off of the government or living off of, making their minimum wage, because there's more incentive to not working hard. I'm not saying that if you work in McDonald's, you're not working hard. I'm sure you're doing the best that you can, but just, being in the office with 10 other moms that say, okay, well, I work at Burger King part-time, I work at McDonald's part-time. Like, there's so much potential out there. And I like to see people succeed. I like to see people move up. I love watching my friends get better jobs. I love helping kids in high school. I volunteer at Largo High School sometimes to help people make resumes and just ultimately work on their speaking skills when they're speaking in front of public and strangers in general, so they can, work their way up and get better jobs. And I love giving back to the community and doing things like that because I want to see people reach their full potential. I love my job. I mean, people might think I'm on the phone all day talking to people complaining about their water bills, but I help people. I don't just, tell people, oh, well, your bill's due tomorrow. I give them the opportunity to.
I think we're going to do one more set of questions.
Okay.
That's fine. But before we move on, there's one thing that the counterpoint that I'd like to make, and this is something that we've run into a lot, is there's a lot of people that can't make the jump because they have to now make the decision, well, if I take this next step in my career, if I get just a little bit more money, I'm going to lose access to healthcare for my children. I'm going to lose access to a benefit that I'm given that feed my children. You know what? I'm just going to stay at this lower rate job because I can't afford to move forward and progress.
I almost quit my job. I wanted to quit my job and go back to college to make $10 an hour again because not only would I qualify for food stamps, but I would get my reduced daycare, and I actually somehow had more money when I made less money because I had more help. And now I'm like, well, I don't feel anybody owes me anything, and I'm more self-sufficient, and I'm proud of myself for that. I feel, I'm doing very well for what I have with what I have, but I want to get to a point to where I can do better for myself. And it's very, very hard when you're living off credit cards and, you're struggling just to make, sure that your daughter has food for the week. So, I mean, ultimately, I would just like to see somebody actually really, I want to see someone that grew up in an actual lower income situation. The people that I see in the office are running for what Rick Scott paid for his own. Was it Rick Scott?
Rick Scott, yeah.
Yeah, he was the one that paid $70 million of his own money into his financing and stuff over the last 6 years, really. I want to see somebody that grew up with nothing, grew up in foster care. I'm not saying that everybody's have a hard time, but if you know what a struggle is, then you know that struggle will always bring you back to your roots and realize, okay, well, I've been here and I did this, so let me actually reach all different, all kinds of people.
It's actually a very common sentiment across most of this area. But thank you very, very much. I very much appreciate it.
Yeah. And
We're gonna
I'm
have
trying to just
one
bring you
more.
around.
Come sit down right here and
You're fine.
Take a seat.
join us on the couch. Join us.
Don't be shy.
Join us on the
Why do you
couch.
have to do this to me?
You brought questions. Join us on the couch.
You wanna ask me a question?
Okay. Somebody's got to join us on the couch.
Right here.
Somebody's got.
All right. What's your question?
Do you have an opinion on competitive currencies?
I have strong concerns with them. Introducing competitive currencies brings up to the question of which currencies are we going to allow to be competitive, which will end up leading to a lot of market tampering issues. I've yet to see a competitive currency plan that I'm 100% happy with. I'm obviously okay with expanding the conversation on it, but I have not yet seen an implementation schedule that I'm comfortable implementing. I think expanding the rarities market, I think expanding the alternative investments market is a little bit more adequate. I also think fixing the fluctuations of the dollar and fixing fixing things that we have with the Federal Reserve with the dollar would be a better first step than trying to institute multiple bad currencies as opposed to just one.
Nice if our dollar was worth something again.
It would be nice if the dollar was worth something again. I agree.
Yeah.
But also moving forward into a new century of economic balance, we base our dollar on gold and silver. Gold and silver won't be a standard forever. So while the dollar is worth nothing based against gold and silver, eventually we actually might consider moving it into a next century's backer. We've discussed on many occasions high composite silicates that we're going to get from the next evolution of mining processes for lunar and near Earth mining operations. We actually find ourselves in a really interesting position as a society that everything is really bad right now with our currencies and with our backings, but it's not a bad time to diversify our holdings as a nation and as a society. So while I'm not 100% sold on competitive currencies inside of the same nation, I'm not opposed to the conversation. I'm definitely looking at finding better ways to back our money that we currently have.
Remember our previous conversation about this, so I knew I could ask. It's like, I remember when we were talking about this outside.
Would you like to join on the couch?
Hello again.
Hello, Lucas. My question to you would be, understand that you're running for Congress coming up here in the next few days in the election. I highly suggest that anybody who cares about the direction of our country would give somebody a chance, like yourself, a libertarian or an independent, somebody in the middle. I can only wish and pray in my own way that people will have the courage to do what they know is right and give somebody a chance to do that. My question is, what do some of the people who want to see yourself progress through our system of chaos, this government that is leading us to who knows where at the moment, people who have hope for change, real change, not Obama change, but something that's fair for everybody. If you have to work ethic to wake up and go through the motions and make an effort, what is your plan, regardless of this election coming up, to just continue moving forward? What should any of us, passionate about what you're trying to do in these changes, what you just shared with the young lady before, a lot of your ideas just seem to make perfect sense. In the event that you don't get in the position of Congress where you can be a stronger voice for us at that level, what are you going to do? And that's my biggest question to you is what, regardless of this situation, in the event that you don't land your position in Congress, what can some of us who want to see somebody ambitious and young like yourself moving forward to make these changes, what are you going to do?
We've been extremely active with several groups for transparency systems. We'll be working with Congress Coin, which is a transparency system that a not-for-profit will be started with them very, very soon. We're very involved with that. My focus with the campaign largely has been local. How do we decided, since we were doing a 2-year-long campaign, we wouldn't be constantly running for office through the entire 2 years, but we would have people around us all the time, volunteers and activists. So we did a lot of community outreach, a lot of community organizing for a lot of not-for-profit groups, a lot of struggling community areas. I grew up in not the highest economic area in Pinellas County. I'm right across the street from the Greenwood area in Clearwater. And we went back into that neighborhood. We were very fortunate to meet a group there that was taking back their community center. It was a city center. The city decided to shut it down. And this group of just neighbors decided that instead of begging the city to keep it open or trying to get another government entity to keep it open, they were going to do it themselves. So we've been deeply involved with them. With my history in activism, we'll be staying extremely active with as things progress forward on the social side. The next 2 years are going to be massive in this country for fair and equal treatment of all people. We're going to be at a fork in the road on, do we continue to push forward with equal treatment under the law, or do we start stifling that? And we'll be, regardless of what happens next week, we'll be staying extremely interwoven in that. And I would probably, if next week doesn't go well, before I ran for office, I was running a group called Take a District, which is a youth outreach program to get kids involved and more active in politics. Fortunately, we've had, through this experience, I've had several great kids step up and want to start their own affiliate of that. So we will probably be, whether I win or lose, we'll be helping reseed that and go back to teaching kids how to write, read, and publish legislation, how to protest, how to petition, how to run for office themselves. So that's been a big passion of mine. So
Get the MLK Center yet?
already got the MLK Center.
Are you being that you're libertarian? Do you consider any organizations that might claim to be constitutional nonprofit organizations? Some of them still put out a little more toward the right or a little more toward the left, but yet they're nonprofit and they're not exactly a politician elected official. Are you trying to work with any organizations to try to bring people a little bit more toward a fair, true balance of transparent government? Are you?
I've had a lot of concern with the systems that have been built, and that was largely why we looked at just building our own, starting from, not necessarily from scratch, utilizing the techniques that have worked, but a lot of like the top 5 that end up coming to my head when we talk about groups that are out there doing activist work have either been around too long or have been involved with the money side of it so long that they're non-social ideas, but when you really get to the root of it, they're extraordinarily interwoven into, and I don't do sign language. No, thank you. They're pushing very party-oriented politics. So there are a couple of really good groups that I'll be looking forward to working with over the next 2 years leading into the presidential. Free and Equal being one of them. They're for electoral politics, opening up the debate a lot broader. Groups like that, I think, are the future, are really what we need. Everybody has an interpretation or opinion on how you utilize the Constitution. Give me 1,000 groups that want to talk about the Constitution, that want to talk about the country. It's so long as I can get everybody to listen to all 1,000 of them and make their own opinion. Because one of the things that I think we've gotten away from and that we've forgotten is our Constitution was born out of a very large argument from a bunch of men who didn't agree with each other, and they came together for the sake of their neighbors and for the sake of the future of what will become their nation, to come to a compromise, to come to a fair and even ground. We've gotten very far away from that, and that's where we need to be getting back to. Have the fight, have the argument, but know at the end of the day we have to actually get something done.
you seem like a man that could bring people together and get people to put their differences aside for the good of our country and the good of, you know, your own backyard. I've liked some of the things we talked about earlier. I'm curious, you said there's a few that maybe are a little less biased toward the left or the right. If you could pick a couple, because my take on it is that you're climbing a mountain alone, and maybe you're creating new tools to get there, when perhaps there could just be a few tools that you could utilize, a few organizations that maybe aren't so skewed right or left, that are a little more fair and balanced.
But the thing that I found in doing that is one of the reasons why we did take a district is obviously I was involved in a lot of the youth-oriented groups. You have a couple that are all right. That put out a lot of good information. Y'all is a good one, but has its own skew. One of the things that I enjoyed from when we were working with Take a District was a lot of the staff that helped me start that was from OFA, was from Obama's re-election team. Several of our meetings had Democratic Socialists, Communists, Libertarians, Republicans, Democrats, Tea Partiers. We literally had the entire spectrum in a room and managed to leave with nobody having major injuries. That, for me, is those conversations are more important than literally anything that's come out of any think tank in the last 10 years. Because at this point, the think tanks are only thinking inside of their boxes. And they're not branching out. They're not crossing lines. So the tools and the groups, I don't even think are there. I don't think.
Do you think?
I think the mountain. This is a mountain that we haven't climbed yet.
Well, I've been thinking just the last 6 to 7 months that it would be really amazing if somebody could bring some of these together for the good of all of us, for everybody. You know, I mean, it would just be a beautiful thing to have this country be a place where we can agree to disagree. You know, nothing got started on a perfect foot. And everybody here today needs to realize we weren't here 200 years ago. We did not have anything to do with some of the imperfections of how this country got going. But we do understand what's fair now. I think everybody can understand what fairness is. You know, you wouldn't want somebody coming into your garage taking your tools without asking, you know, certain rights that you have, your privacy, you know. Who wants terrorism over here? But at the sake of my privacy, I'm not a big fan of, you know, being eavesdropped on. I don't like the Patriot Act. I don't like this whole, you know, take me into custody with no due process. I want to see those laws that have been made into law be taken back down because they offend me personally. They offend the Constitution. I have a grandparent from World War II who's got a Purple Heart, a grandfather from World War I who's got a Purple Heart. I couldn't even imagine what they went into those battlefields and sacrificed their lives for had anything to do. I mean, I'm 45 years old, and I remember going to Mount Vernon Elementary here in St. Petersburg, and this was a time where my first history classes, social studies they call it or whatever, they would tell me how awful it is that the KGB eavesdrops on its people, and I just find it to be one of the most audacious things that our government has done. They try to manipulate us thinking that it's okay because we're going to fight terrorism, but then the terrorists won. Then the terrorists did their job. They got what they wanted. Now we're all in fear that your point of view is no longer going to be accepted. And how far does our government go to where our points of view don't matter? I think that anybody who cares about their family who's died and sacrificed for them should be 100,000,000% behind somebody like yourself in the middle and have the confidence. Like saying that, you know, it's a vote thrown away is one of the most ridiculous things I hear, because that's like saying, well, you're willing to go against everything that you believe in your heart and soul because you might not make it. Like, you know, that's it.
Okay, so we're going to get to the next one. I will say, in answer to your group's question, there's about 3 kids here tonight, actually. That'll be the future of this conversation. That they're willing to open up new groups and sit down across party lines. I think
just
that's what
hope that you do get your momentum, and that whatever happens coming up, that you have the passion that you have now to continue doing these good things. That
the beauty of our race is it's not me. It's the people that are standing behind me, and there's no getting rid of all of them.
I'm a little bit older than you, and I'm getting a little tired of it. But you have some energy. I hope that energy keeps you moving along, man.
At least for the next 6 days. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thanks for coming.
Go ahead, Mike.
I wanted to ask you about what your views on the whole Middle East situation right now through ISIS, and not just ISIS as a whole. I'm talking about the entire Afghanistan, Iraq, Iran. Like, what would you suggest as action in those areas?
We've very much been along the lines of removing ourselves from the situation and starting to withdraw. 10 years of conflict in Iraq has begot a request for another 10 years of interaction. And we've not only progressed to a part where it's extraordinarily dangerous in the world, worse so than when we started. You know, every time we take down one evil thing, we end up with, we got ISIS this time. What comes after them? While there are assets over there are allies over there that need to be protected, a blanket schedule of we're just going to go fight everywhere. We were as active as 9 military theaters as recently as a few months ago. That's entirely unsustainable, and when we're pushing it as it's for the common defense of the nation, we're now having to send National Guard, Coast Guard. Those are supposed to be here. Those are supposed to be defending us. How far are we damaging our own national security fighting wars overseas? The gentleman that sat down before you brought up.
Do you think us leaving Iraq gave a doorway for ISIS to step in, or regardless of whether we were there or not?
Here's the thing. Does that mean that if we're worried that if we leave a nation that something bad might happen afterwards, does that mean that we should never leave that nation? Should we just annex Iraq? Well, not going well in Afghanistan either, so we should just permanently annex Afghanistan. Yes, bad things might happen if we leave those nations. We are still attempting to clean up a mess that we started 30, 40, 50 years ago. It hasn't gotten any better. The one thing that we have not tried is withdraw. Is stop being involved with those other nations. Those are sovereign nations. They should be sovereign. We did show our support for a couple of isolated strikes that occurred in northern Iraq. Everything does have to be looked at on an individual basis. And I'm not saying, just as much as I'm opposed to a blanket statement of war, I'm opposed to a blanket statement of non-intervention. There has to be a balance. There has to be a mix. At this point, we're running pure octane now, where we're going to burn ourselves out. It's time to maybe start injecting something that tones us back a little bit.
Okay. No, I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Got a short one.
We got a question from YouTube too about leftitarian. What does it mean to be a leftitarian?
Much more to the classical libertarian side. Hi. It also, leftitarian was something that I completely made up during a news interview. So we've become means over the last year or so. It more speaks to my background. I'm much more, my background's much more largely from the social side. Obviously, my economic issues are extraordinarily conservative, but we phrased leftitarian to kind of do justice to my activism side.
Okay, so what moment did you decide that you wanted to run for Congress?
3 beers in and a bad bet. No, no. I was asked. We were running, take a district, and one of our kids had decided to run for a local position up in Tarpon Springs, and at his kickoff party was our now gubernatorial candidate, Adrian Wiley, and several party members who work for his campaign now, and they actually talked me into it, and I called my co-founder for Take a District, and she hung up on me when I said that we should run now. And when I finally got back on the phone, I go, no. They promised it would be really interesting. Little did we know that our predecessor, Congressman Young, would pass away during the campaign, and we would go to a special. And we definitely didn't know we'd end up in a one-on-one race for the general. So
interesting is what we got. We've been very proud to be here, very proud of what we've been able to build, and the message we've been able to get out there. I didn't really think there was an exact point that I decided, yes, I want to be a congressman. We ran for a while just going, we're just going to go until somebody tells us to stop.
Yeah.
Here we are 6 days before the election and nobody has.
Yeah.
So
I think you guys actually have a lot of support, like definitely. I wasn't really into voting. I was one of the people that was like, oh, well, that guy's bad and that guy's not as bad as the other person. And now after meeting some of you guys, I've been a little bit happier about the fact that I'm going to vote for someone that's actually going to do something for us instead of like to us.
you're actually my favorite voter. During the special election, was a lady, Jenna. She was the first person to tell me I've never voted, and a little bit older than me, and I'd never once voted. And during the special election, said for the first time ever, I'm going to go vote because I want to vote for you. And so if you really want a turning point moment where I went, you know what, I could get into this being a congressman thing, that may have been one of the big ones. Hearing somebody say, because of you, I want to be involved. Because of you, I want to actually go vote. Had a major impact on me and my career.
That's awesome.
So.
Well, I'm excited that you're running.
Well, thank you.
All right. Who else has questions?
Anybody else?
I think we're about to wrap up, are we?
You got 3 minutes. Oh, yeah, we can wrap up.
Thank you to everybody who was watching. Obviously, we've attempted to be as open and as accessible as humanly possible throughout the entirety of this campaign. There's 6 more days. This race will come down to turnout. If you're still on the fence on whether or not you're going to vote at all, there are a lot of good races, mine included, but there are a lot of good races that need your look, that need votes. During our time in the special election, there was a race on the beaches that came down to 2 votes. That's how important, that's how close these electoral races can get. Go out, be involved, be active. Over the next 6 days, feel free to reach out to me, beat me up, ask questions that you have. For everybody in district, the Facebook to use for that is facebook.com/Lucas Overby, the number 4 Liberty. Message me on there. We leave the messenger open 20 hours a day. Message me. Don't call me. My voice is going out. For the I know 5 days, more people that message me, the better. But any questions that you have, I'm more than happy to answer them. Thank you guys for joining us. Thank you everybody for who helped set this up, and thank you to everybody who joined me on the couch. And thank you to Levi and Judah at Mad Hatters for not only hosting our meet and greet here tonight, but also hosting the ballot parties to help people understand their ballots a little bit better and be a little bit more excited about voting. Have a good night, and please go out and vote.
Woo! Thanks. Okay, you
Sweet, dude.